I remember thinking, man, if I'm ever in charge of anything, I'm not going to do it like this. I'm going to do it different.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the podcast Behind the Screens, where we have the opportunity to talk to some real professionals from the background screening industry, people who have really made it happen, people who operate behind the screens. And today we have with us a person who I have followed and admired for many years, one of my favorite people in the industry, a person who often has the term president or chief of operations after his name. He should also have the initials GSD. That stands for Gets Stuff Done. My pleasure to welcome Larry White. Larry, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Les. It's great. Absolutely great to be here.
Well, Larry, it's good to have you here. And let's start with the first question I ask everybody. What are you currently doing?
Sure.
What's your current position? What do you do? What do you like about it? Mike is yours.
Great. Yeah. Well, I've had a long career. I can't remember some of the earlier stuff, but I definitely know what I do now. And I'm Chief Operating Officer at JDP. JDP is a good fit for me. It's a company that's, we're big enough to support enterprise business, but we're still small enough to be responsive and nimble. The focus at JDP is a lot of our business is on high-risk communities, particularly children. We're very technology driven and, it's meaningful work, lots of good people. It's a great fit for me and I'm really enjoying it.
And JDP is headquartered in Pittsburgh, and
Yes.
you're so you go back and forth between Pittsburgh and Florida?
Yeah, not as much as like I would in the past, but I do go to Pittsburgh and I live and I work primarily out of Tampa, Florida.
Okay, that's great. The other thing that you always remind me of it, every time I see a Nike commercial, I think of you, and the reason is that the Nike commercial or the Nike, whatever you call it, slogan is just do it. And when I think of just Larry White, I think of just do it. All right, you're just
Right. Not big on preparation, man. I just go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, get it done. So before going to JTP, you said you had a long career and an interesting career path. Is there any of that you would like to share with us? Talk a little bit about your journey to where you were to where you are now.
Sure. Love to. Yeah. I've listened to some of your podcasts. The guests have some very exciting pasts. Mine are dull, but maybe I make up for it in length because I've been around a long time. But, I grew up on a dirt road in Oklahoma. I don't think I've run around with anybody else that can say that. So I think that's kind of unique. But when I got out of school, I went to work for a company called Dun Bradstreet. And it's not as well known a name now, but at that time it was a pretty well-known company. It was a very large, maybe the world's largest information company. And Dun Bradstreet focused on information about businesses rather than individuals. And in those days, there certainly wasn't a lot of electronic or web-based access to information. It required physical effort. So, we had 120 some odd offices throughout the United States. And in those days, they moved you every 2 or 3 years. I got to live in a lot of different places, work a lot of different places. But as access to information became easier, that physical presence didn't have the value it had before. And so we were somewhat diminished at Dun & Bradstreet with the role that I had. And I was recruited to go to work at a company called BorgWarner Information Services, which was a subsidiary of BorgWarner. It was previously Haft Reports, which was one of the first companies in screening here in the Tampa area. And you remember at that time, the way the industry was, it was more about, did you know where to get the information in those days? Now we take that for granted, but in those days, you had to know where to get the information. And working at Dun & Bradstreet and having the background I had, most of these companies in the industry at that time, it was pretty fragmented. It was regional, and you had private eyes, you had attorneys, like you had people who kind of knew how to get information. So we were able to have some success by just, from a scale and a best demonstrated practice point of view, just the stuff we learned at Dun Bradstreet of processing and consuming, delivering information. So we had quite a little bit of success with that. And it was really all based on that experience with Dun Bradstreet. And this is a regular theme in this industry, was purchased by Pinkerton Services Group. Worked for Fred Giles, who was a great mentor to me. And that's where I really learned a lot about this business and the nuances of the business. And I'm forever grateful to Fred for that.
And you probably listened to, because Fred was a guest of the broadcast
Yeah.
too, a little early
Yeah.
on. That was great.
Yeah.
Hearing from Fred.
The timing and when I worked for Fred and the way we worked together was just really good for me. And it made me realize, hey, this is a good place to be and this is where I want to be.
Right.
We were acquired by ChoicePoint, which in those days was the largest screening company in the world, I guess.
Right.
And my job there when I got bought was to kind of fold my organization into theirs. They had bought a company in St. Pete, Application Profiles, St. Petersburg, Florida. So we relocated over there. And this may be a little bit interesting. We went over there, got our clients moved over, and, I didn't really have a job. So they fired me. And the guy that fired me, I kind of took that moment of being fired to say, hey, you guys aren't very good. Here's all the things that I see that I think you should do different. It turned out to be about a 3-hour conversation. And he said, well, you give me a lot to think about. I went home. I told my wife, like, hey, man, I think I got fired today, which was not well received by any stretch. But the next day they hired me back and they put me in charge of that location. And, we implemented the processes again, like we had at Dun Bradstreet. We had a great deal of success and had a pretty good career there, about 7 years. They were acquired, didn't survive that acquisition. Went to a couple organizations, including eVerifile, where I had the responsibility to build a new platform, which was great experience, which led me to EBI, where I was president of EBI. Great people, great company, perfect situation for me. They ultimately were acquired, and I went over to Hound Labs in the drug testing side. I really wanted to get on cutting edge technology. It was a great solution. Engineering-wise, we just couldn't make it work consistently. Ran out of money, and so either get fired, run out of money. And now I'm where I'm at with JDP, which is a great fit for me.
Wow, what a great career. And some of those names are such blasts from the past, Application Profiles.
Yeah.
And then people don't really think of ChoicePoint anymore. I can't even remember where ChoicePoint is now. But
it's in the
it was not-
FADV. Yeah, it's in that whole FADV group. Yeah.
someplace yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have, what came to mind as listening to you is the old Johnny Cash song, I've been everywhere, man.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Can't keep a job. Keep bouncing around. But
Well, I wouldn't look at it as you can't keep a job. I would look at it as that, people want you and you go places.
there you go, Les. I agree. Good point. I'll rephrase.
Well, you've come a long way from that dirt road.
I would say.
In Oklahoma.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness, yes.
Which I now assume might be even paved. Right.
It is paved now. It's still a dead end. Not a lot goes on that road. Not a lot goes on still. But yeah. I don't, at Dun Bradstreet or in this industry, I've never really run into anybody else that grew up on a dirt road in Oklahoma.
Right. Well, you heard
Might happen. You got nothing
That's
in
an
common.
amazing story from dirt road to hard charging, get it done, just do it. President, COO of some really happening organizations. So that's marvelous. Congratulations.
Miracle, man.
No, it's well, if it's a miracle, it's self-made. Because Larry, you certainly did it. So putting all that together and all the careers up and downs and the changes and all the organizations that you were instrumental in, what's an early lesson you learned in your career that stuck with you that comes to mind that you might want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm really a people person. I think I learned working at a Fortune 50 company like Dun Bradstreet. I just remember thinking, kind of the way they ran things and the way people, I wouldn't say we were treated poorly, but it was heavy production, heavy performance focus, not a lot of accolades, right? Just, if you got your job done good, you get to keep it another month. And I remember thinking, man, if I'm ever in charge of anything, I'm not going to do it like this. I'm going to do it different. So I think what I learned from that and what I've applied, I think consistently through my career is when I am in charge or, responsible for a team or people, I go on the premise that I really believe everybody wants to do good work. Everybody wants to be proud of what they do. When they talk to their friends or people they care about, they want to be proud and talk about how important it is. So to do that, I always think it's important to understand why people work. Some people are driven, incredibly ambitious. Some people, hey, it's just a way to pay the bills. Understand that about people and then help them understand what they do and how it fits into the organization so that when something good happens, you can demonstrate how you were a part of that. And I really focus, instead of catching people doing stuff wrong, I try to catch people doing stuff right. And when they do stuff right, I make sure I acknowledge it. And that's worked really well for me. And that comes from the early days of being managed in a certain way that really doesn't unlock optimize what I could do. And that's what I try to do. Try to just get the best out of people in their situations. And it's worked out well for me.
I mean, that's a fantastic observation. I can't tell you how many HR lunches I've sat through or webinars where people have made the point that they would go to managers or employers and say, why do people quit? And the owners always say, well, because of money or this or that. And it turns out when you talk to workers, they hardly ever quit. Money's hardly ever in the top 5. It's always, I didn't have a sense of meaning. I wasn't treated well by my manager. I wasn't appreciated. I didn't have a place to go. And the fact that you clearly saw that early on, I think, is one of the reasons you've been so successful. The organizations you've been successful.
There's no doubt. I mean, it's the way I always look at it, when you do lose people and it's, a lot of times they blame the person that leaves or whatever, but I always look like it's our job to make people want to work here. I mean, if you want to interview for another job, go get it. You should do what's best for you. It's my job to keep you here. And I've always had that approach. And again, it's always worked well for me.
Words to live by. And the statistics bear that out 100%. I mean, study after study will bear that. What you know intuitively and what you practice is, it's been well documented. So that's a great observation. I hope that people are listening to this.
Nobody listens to me, Les. Nobody's going to listen to me, but thank you.
Larry, I listen to you all the time.
Well, you're an exception. Right. You're an outlier.
So that's great. So you stayed with the screening industry, starting with Dun Bradstreet, and you progressed as you described. What do you like about the background screening industry? Because with your credentials, you could have easily have gone elsewhere or gone up other verticals, but you stayed in screening. What attracted you?
Yeah, and I want to give Fred credit. I'm kind of a candidate-centric person. We have all been through, many of us have been through a lot of consolidations and, the angst of getting a job and the time and, you interview and, the background check is part of that. And so even before the industry kind of fell into a candidate-centric position, I was always candidate-centric, and it's always been important to me. Certainly customers are very much as important, and to them, those candidates are important as well. So I've always been candidate-centric. That's my passion. I want to make sure we get it right, that we represent that candidate accurately so the client can make the right decision based on that representation. And so that's very important to me. It gives purpose, I think, and meaning to what we do, and it means a lot to me.
That's outstanding. One of the points that I made early on when I used to give lectures on legal compliance and or presentations and keynotes or so forth was to drive home that exact point in a slightly different way, was that even though a screening firm's clients, quote unquote, are the employers who pay the bills, morally, ethically, and legally under the FCRA, the applicants are clients too. They're clients in every way of the word, every way you can imagine. And I always advocated when I gave those presentations that your best customer service people should be the ones that are taking calls from applicants. Because when an applicant calls and they're upset about something, you'd rather solve it and make them a fan rather than make them someone that goes off to find a lawyer. So
100% agree.
My 2 cents. So, I mean, that's a really great insight as well. As background screeners, we need to be applicant-centric and sensitive to the fact that we're not the employment police. But, given your history and all the places you've been and the positions you've held, from your perspective, off the top of the head, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the screening industry? And what would you identify as being maybe the most challenging thing going forward, that kind of top of mind?
Sure. Yeah, so we come from a similar time starting where the pitch was to convince people to screen, not use us for screening. You should screen, and here's why,
Yeah.
right? Then it became pretty ubiquitous, and it was about who you choose for screening. And we went through, okay, now we got to deliver it via web delivery, and turnaround time became important. Cost became so important. All those layers stayed in; those haven't gone away. Then the applicant tracking system era, I guess, began, and that was, for me, that was a huge lesson. It really changed the dynamic in the industry, and the early adopters really did well with that. And then it became, always has been, but it became more about privacy, right? It became more about PII and privacy and protecting that information. So it's been a series of changes, and as it evolves, those other things like cycle time and cost and delivery, that none of that goes away, just adds layer upon layer. I think going forward, to me, that what I would envision is, and this is really due to privacy and individual ownership of their information, is, the role CRAs play, I think, will change fairly dramatically. And there's a transaction between a company and a consumer, right? And we facilitate that now. I think we still facilitate it in a way of a clearinghouse, but I think more and more it's going to be that consumer decides what information they will share with that company. Our role will be to say, hey, this consumer is who they say they are, and the information they're providing you, we can validate as accurate information. And I really see that. It's a trend now, and I really see that as the future. And that model and figuring that out, I think that's the biggest challenge we have going forward.
That's a great observation. And I agree. I remember the old days that the pitch was, why should I do screening? To then it became takeaway. Well, why should I do screening with you?
Right? Exactly. Remember that? It was like, you should screen. Here's why. People don't know how easy they got it now. You just got to be the one. Back then, you had to convince them to screen.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is a kind of a trip down memory lane a little bit, but I think your
I'm good at
observation
that.
about the future is right on. There's just a lot of moving parts there that are happening.
Yeah.
So looking back on your career, starting with that, I just love that your story about, starting from the dirt road to president and COO of
It's true.
firms that are just really, on the cutting edge happening firms. As you look back, what are some of the accomplishments or achievements that stand out or bring a smile to your face as you think back on your career? And your career's not over. You're still you're still in the middle of it.
Gee whiz, Les, there's been so many. How do I know? No, I will say I do. And I know the answer to this. Having been around a while, having worked at a lot of different places with a lot of different people, I see people that I worked with that, it was their first job out of school, or, they did employment. And then I see them in big roles in this industry, kind of like a coaching tree kind of thing. Right. And I just get so much satisfaction and fulfillment out of that. Like on an ego level, hey man, I was a part of that, kind of like Fred was with me. And, when I see people I've worked with and remember them when they were, fresh kids out of school, maybe, making 50 calls a day to get verifications, I see where they are now. It's really fulfilling. And there's quite a few people like that. And so, yeah, I'm proudest of that. If I'm proudest of anything, it's that. I'm proudest to go to PBSA and see somebody I worked with a long time ago and see what they're doing. It's really fulfilling for me.
So, as part of a theme, in the same way that you're concerned about applicants and the applicant experience, and the same way you're concerned about how to manage people, that you're managing people to get the best out of them, this idea of mentorship of people that you see and start at entry level. Well, that's great.
No, yeah, it's a dual thing. I'm a pretty dumb guy. I don't really have a lot of good ideas, but people do. People you work with do. You create an environment where they can safely give you those ideas. That everybody wins. So it's got dual benefits, but yeah, it couldn't be any other way. That's me in my own skin.
Well, I will have to disagree with you, Larry. You're not a dumb guy. And all right.
Well, I said that so you would say that. See, that's good.
And the $20 you paid me.
I'm manipulative. You gotta watch out.
It's what?
Yeah, I'm manipulative. You gotta watch out for me, man.
Right. But you're smart enough to get good ideas out of people and to take them and recognize them and
know my
and
weakness.
give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's it. You always want to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I mean, is one
Always.
management philosophy.
It's not hard if you're me, but yes, always.
And you always have a career. I didn't realize this about Larry, but you always have a backup career in stand-up comedy. All right.
Well, that'd be great. That would be great. I would enjoy that.
So talk about, mentorship and PBSA. I know you've been involved in PBSA going way back. What roles PBSA played in your career?
Well, I mean, PBSA is it is great. First of all, I look forward to it, but, and you just, again, hate to take you back, but when we were starting and when I was at BorgWarner Information Services, I'd been at Dun Bradstreet. I'd looked at financial statements for years and analyzed businesses, but I don't know what a good P&L looked like. I didn't know what a good, I didn't know the cost structure. There was a company called Avert. I don't know if you remember Avert. It
Oh
was,
yeah, no, I
you
remember
remember
her.
Dean Suppose, right? And he
Yeah.
was public. So I can remember, getting that 10K that he published and studying that P&L to see, okay, what are your labor costs? What are my labor costs? But when PBSA started, I think we were all kind of feeling that way. It is such a tight knit group. We're all competitors, and it doesn't feel like it. And I feel like the industry was young. We were all kind of having success in our own ways, and we got together and shared ideas. We developed, ethical standards for the industry. I have just never been in a more collaborative situation. And I will say it has been a huge, relationships, just a huge impact on my career and any success that I've had. I give a lot of that to PBSA and some of the early founders and presidents, such as yourself. Really a lot of foresight there. I just love it. It's a great benefit. You go to PBSA, you got to spend money, you got to fly people. I try to bring as many people as I can. It's such a good experience and adds just a great deal of value to the industry, to me personally, to the businesses. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear. When we were way back when first starting it, and I was talking to a couple other members of the founding committee, and we were actually worried that we actually ran the numbers. So, well, what if only 20 people joined? And we weren't sure because there was no guarantees. I mean, we were just a volunteer committee. And I said, well, Dad, can I make this happen with only 20 members? And we kind of ran the math. Well, sort of. And then it turned out people had an appetite for it. And there were just so many people that were willing to, well, like yourself and so many others that were willing to roll up your sleeves and volunteer and get involved and do the heavy lifting. So
It was great. It's great. Yeah. Thank to you, Bob Capwell, the others. I don't want to leave anybody out, but really a lot of foresight there. And it's been such a win-win for everybody. It's just great.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So at this point, we really haven't talked about Lori White outside of the screening world. So I assume you don't live, breathe, and eat screening 24/7.
I don't.
You must do something else.
Don't. I don't.
So what's your hobby? What do you do for fun? What's your interest outside of work?
Yeah. So, well, I'm a big sports fan. I think like you, baseball. And my dad signed with the New York Yankees at the age of 18, right out of high school, played 6 years in the minors. So huge baseball fan of the Rays here in Tampa, big Lightning fan, go to a lot of hockey games. I have 4 great kids. I have 4 great grandkids. I've got a 5th on the way. So that certainly keeps me busy. And I try to play golf once a week. So, it's very sports centric, kids centric. I just love being in situations like that and having a good time, being with people you like to be with. It's great.
So break it down. First of all, how old are the kids?
My direct kids? Ooh, yeah.
Of your kids, I've got every kid's direct, indirect, whatever
No,
constitutes a family.
okay. My kids range from the age of 23 to 37.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I always say I had children in the 80s, the 90s, and the thousands, man. So,
Right.
after that, it was great to have a decade off.
All right. All right. You kept on going.
Yeah, I don't think I wasn't alone in my house for more than 5 minutes for like 35 years, but it's all better now.
So completely off topic, where are the Rays playing this season? Because their blow up dome apparently got blown apart during the hurricane.
Yeah. Yes, it's been a challenge. So they're playing at Steinbrenner Field, which is here in Tampa. It's where the Yankees have spring training. It's a nice park, but it only, we never draw a lot in Tampa anyway, but for the Rays anyway in St. Pete. But been to a few games there. It's interesting. It's very different. The team was built on pitching and defense and speed, and this is pretty much a small ballpark. So the ball flies out of there. It's a little bit different environment, but it's outdoors, and I'm interested to see how that works in the Florida summer. But they're playing just down the road here at Steinbrenner Field. It's so far so good, I'd say.
I think we're living parallel lives. The A's moved to Sacramento to a minor league park. It holds 14,000, and even that might be too big for what they'll draw. And Sacramento's, 100 degrees every day during the summer.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's
Yeah.
all night games. All
I
right.
know, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine how this is going to work out, but we'll see. I'll be there. We'll see.
So I'm just amazed. I've never actually asked anyone to do this before, but how in the heck did hockey become popular in Florida? I mean, Florida is not known for
That's crazy,
its snow
right?
season.
No, and I've had Lightning. Well, I gave up my Lightning season tickets a couple years ago, but I got them originally in 1998. I think the team started in the mid 90s. So, a couple of things with that. A lot of people retire here from the Northeast and from the upper Midwest, Michigan, places that are more traditionally hockey oriented. And, there are a lot of what we call snowbirds, right? Canadians that come down here for the winter and go back
Right.
to Canada for the summer. So there was always a high level of interest in hockey with that evolving, I guess, demographic. And when the Lightning first started, it was a lot of people that had other favorite teams, right? They'd show up to watch the Flyers, they'd show up to watch the Bruins, or they'd show up to watch the Red Wings. But now, they've been around long enough. They've got a pretty good fan base. It's kind of neat to see the change after watching it in the early days. And I really think it's just Florida is a true melting pot. And, it's a real, from a state income tax point of view, a lot of people would retire here and they come from places that love hockey.
Wow, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. A background screening session with Larry White, a sports aficionado, and learning
That's
more
right,
about
man.
hockey than,
I don't know
than you
why
might
they don't
want to
hire
know.
me. I don't know why they don't hire me, but, what are you going to do?
With all that, we're going to play a game we call Fun Facts. Tell us something about yourself that people may not know about you that's completely unrelated to background screening.
That's, that's
And that,
hard.
by the way, at PBSA after party at the hotel bar will is good fodder for the cannon when it comes to razzing you.
Yes. Well, and yes, and I didn't mention with PBSA, I'm a fan of free drinks. So that's another benefit that PBSA has afforded me. So yeah, this is, that I had. Yeah. There's a lot of things, man. But I will say this. I think this is semi-interesting. And this is my current life right now. So, my kids have grown, don't live here anymore. At least nobody's come back yet. And, so it's just me and my wife. And what we have somehow fallen into is every night we play a very competitive 2 or 3 hours of Mario Kart on our Nintendo Switch. And so, so I probably don't tell people about that very much because I don't know how it would be taken. But yeah, I'm a big Mario Kart guy in the evenings. That's the current Larry White thing. So
That's the fun. And Larry, you realize there's no attorney-client privilege here. The whole world gets to know that you play Mario Kart 2-3 hours a night.
Mario Kart, if you are a Mario Kart aficionado, you know that Rainbow Road is the toughest course, and that's also my nickname for my wife. I call her Rainbow Road. She's a bit of a challenge, but we do play every night, and it's fun. If kids do come, we make them play, and they don't like it as much as we do, but that's the evenings now. Very
So
safe.
maybe the kids would come back more often if they weren't forced to play.
Yeah. Get your controller. You're playing Mario Kart. Oh. Just happened over
Or-
Easter weekend. Yeah, much disappointment. Forced Mario Kart playing. Yeah.
right. Oh, that is a riot. Well, I'm going to have to go on AI and take a look at Mario Karts.
Yeah, check it out.
And because I'm not sure before now I've ever heard of it.
Yeah,
And
it's an acquired taste for sure, man.
yeah, it may not be one I acquire, but now you got
People in your circles, yeah, you're not gonna be
me more
exposed to it.
curious about it. All right. Well, Larry, this has been a lot of fun, and time goes quick and you're having fun. We covered a lot of ground here. What would be your advice for newcomers in the industry? Not just brand new people that are looking at it as a career, but maybe people that have been doing it. They're doing the entry level thing where they're doing verification calls or basic criminal record research, that sort of thing. And what would be your advice for them to get ahead of the industry and to move up in the world and make it a more vigorous career path if they choose? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important to understand those roles. Certainly at Dun Bradstreet, I did a lot of roles like that. It's helped me immensely. But to me, it's relationships. I mean, that's another thing about PUSA, and I would challenge people to think about their careers and what's happened in their whatever. I bet you can tie it to a relationship. And for me, it's, I'm a people person. So, okay, maybe that's, easier for me than it might be for others, but I would encourage, those opportunities to go to an event, to go to a meeting. You might not want to go, you might not, it'd be like whatever. Go. Just go. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but you meet a lot of great people, and you just never know 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 5 years from now, 8 months from now. You just never know that they might be involved with something that helps you get to a place you want to get to.
I think that's so true. And I think part of the problem we see now with industry consolidation is that whereas there'd be more firms before they were independent, so there'd be more people attending, as the firms get rolled up and consolidated now, you're not finding as many people going to PBSA. A firm may not dig as deep as they used to.
Yeah.
And I tell people that even if you don't get your firm to pay for you to go, it's worth taking some PTO. It's worth paying the fee. It's worth paying the hotel and airfare yourself, because it's going to PBSA is better than getting a 4-year degree.
It's a smart investment. It's a smart investment. I absolutely agree, and I've done that myself. In between jobs, that is a great advice. And I encourage people that go to bring as many people as they can. You just never know. You never know.
And people should join a committee, and even if you don't feel as though you're ready, you join. And what's funny about PBSA is that it's really a meritocracy. People end up being on the committee chairs who had no idea they could do that just because they're willing to do the work, and they work well with others, and making those contacts and attending those weekly or monthly calls. So there's just nothing to replace that.
Yeah, that's so true. That's great advice.
Yeah. Larry, this has been great. I'm just reflecting on some of the things that you were saying. You brought to mind that famous quote that people don't remember what you did, but they remember how you make them feel. It was just really seems to be your style of management, leadership is part of what you do, and it's just fantastic. So we're gone a little longer than we normally do, but for good reason. And I'd love to hear all these stories and the tour, in a way, of the industry history, but with a keen eye towards the future as well. So we normally conclude, as we will this time, with giving our guest the last word. So Larry White, what do you want to add? Anything you want to say about the industry, or anything you want?
I would say the dude abides, man. Just abide. Just abide. It's all good.
It's all good.
It's
Is that Florida talk?
Well, it's dirt road talk.
All right. And so with your role in the industry, do you have any other advice, or looking at your crystal balls, where the industry might be going?
Well, to what I said earlier, I do think, AI is certainly becoming more and more important. You have to understand it. JDP has made a pretty significant investment in it, but you certainly want to use it in situations that are pretty cut and dried, but that speeds up cycle time, which benefits those candidates, benefits those customers. So I do think that the industry's always evolved based on technology and the ability to do things, even with blockchain, with individuals and credential wallets and some of those types of things. If you have the chance to be where you want to be somewhere where that's going on, where a company believes in and invests in technology and is nimble enough to implement it and be ahead of the curve rather than catching up.
Good advice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Behind the Screens, and we just had the last word from Mr. Larry White, the person whose motto could be just get stuff done.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Larry, your observations about being people-centric and helping people find a meaning in their employment and making sure they're treated well, and making places where you're in charge, places where they want to work, is just so helpful and so insightful these days. So
thanks.
Really great to hear it.
Great. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that has been Mr. Larry White, COO GSD, who has regaled us with some really great information, and I really appreciate you being here.
All right, man. Thanks, Les.
Thanks, Larry. All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info, or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.